everybody. My name is Fran. I used to work at the garden for a long time, and I know almost everybody here, but not everybody. And it might be one of the first times I've ever been at the wetland with.
She's here.
She is here. She used to say there were fairies and some trees up there, but that's a whole other subject. So welcome to the wetland to celebrate Janice. We have several people that would like to speak, but I wanted to make a few announcements. When we're done with this short program here, everyone is invited to cider and cookies. All the cookies were made by delightful members here today. And then the wetland is going to remain open till 5 o'clock. So if anybody would like to walk the trails, please do. If you take the main trail, it goes down to the pond. It's really beautiful. Or you can walk this way behind me and do a loop. Also at the end of the service of this celebration, whenever you leave the wetland, there's flowers here on the table. There's sunflowers and white roses. Everyone is invited to take a stem home with them to remember Janice, so don't forget. And please eat up to take them home. So I'd like to introduce the Santa Fe Botanical Gardens Executive Director, Rick. Rick is going to say a few things before other folks speak. I'd also like to thank Christine Southmore here. And I'd like to thank Christina for organizing this whole event.
Welcome everybody to this beautiful place on a beautiful day. I made just a couple of very brief notes, and I didn't have the privilege of knowing Janice, but I feel like so you all are gathered here to celebrate her talents, her joy, her passions. As a newcomer, to me, and I've gotten the privilege to meet nearly all of you, your presence today demonstrates an outpouring of that love and respect and appreciation. And again, to me, it's an affirmation of one of many ways. It's meaningful, it's important, and it's both an entity, a family, and a place. Thank you.
I think you'll be able to hear me back there. Can you hear me? I'm a retired infantry first sergeant, so I'm accustomed to speaking in front formation. Well, where do I begin? With a Janice, because I'm here. We're just always happy and just a bright to see her. So a little bit about Aunt Janice, you may not know. She's from Arkansas. We're from Arkansas. Aunt Janice was born in a little town called Dermot, Arkansas, which is close to McGee. Her father had just returned from World War II and met my mother the first time, his 3-year-old daughter. Aunt Janice was raised in a small town called McGee, Arkansas in the 60s, late 50s and 60s. Her father was a railroad worker for the Missouri Pacific Railroad. And she grew up with a little Southern Belle life that you would think that Aunt Janice would live. And I know she began dating Uncle Sonny in college. I'm not sure if they knew each other before. More likely they did, because Uncle Sonny, if you didn't know, is from Leonora, Arkansas, which is even smaller than McGee. And they probably knew each other, but I know that they got together in college because he originally was interested in one of her friends. And what she told me was one of my chopped liver. But eventually he asked her out, and thank goodness for all of us, that worked out to a long and wonderful marriage, which brought her here. I remember talking about places she was going to retire. Oklahoma was one they were considering. I was rooting for that because that's where we wound up. But she wound up here, and it doesn't take very long to see why. This is my first trip to Santa Fe. What a beautiful place. What rich culture. I remember going and visiting Aunt Janice in New Orleans and in Houston, and you could not have hired a better tour guide, I'm sure you know. I got to see things that I never would have experienced, and never knew anything about culture or trying to engage folks in their native language and things like that. We just talk about that. Now that's what we do. Back then, we just wasn't talking about it. Aunt Janice was cutting edge in that way, I guess you could say. And her and Uncle Sonny, and just we'd all get together at Christmas at my grandmother's house. This time I'll always remember. And I'm sad to see him gone, but she told me about this place. We own a small piece of land ourselves, this river bottom wetland. And she told me about this. She told me about the plant she had here. And it really is wonderful to see the family she had here. Her sister is my mother. Unfortunately, her health did not allow her to travel here today, but we're going to talk to her about it when we get home and let her know what happened. But thank you all for coming out. I'm sorry we got to the wrong place. We got out here a day early and still wound up being late. And as a retired military guy, I don't like being late. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for being here. Just what a wonderful gesture. I'm glad to be part of it.
Okay, so wait a minute, Jean. No. A few years and a few fractures ago, I was head of the Botanical Garden Hospitality, and it was a big job, a lot to do. And Janice decided that I really needed help, so we schlepped coffee urns, coolers, food, table decorations, all sorts of things into museums and meeting places, and we always had a beautiful flower arrangement with corn. But Janice always used to say, and I think it's true, feed them and they will come. I found out at that point that she really loved the Leonora Curtin Preserve. I was one of the first docents here when we first opened up. I always liked to say that I was the oldest docent here. Anyway, then we worked together again on the children's holiday craft workshop. And again we were schlepping huge materials from the storage room to the site where the workshop was held. We always seemed to be carrying heavy stuff, which we shouldn't have been doing at our age, but we did anyway. And she was such a big help to me, I couldn't have done it without her. We talked about our various ailments over the years. We couldn't get together as much as we would have liked, but we kept in touch by email, bitching about our ailments and politics. So we were like-minded as far as that was concerned. Come for that. And I know you came to celebrate her now. So, Janice.
And I had some things I wanted to be sure to say. For my money, this place should be called the Janice Tucker Wetlands. I realized that the two Leonoras were responsible for acquiring the land and keeping it from being developed. But Janice was the one who helped bring it to life for the public. In the 17 years that I have volunteered here as a docent, Janice, along with her faithful and wonderful sidekick, Helen Woody. Where are you, Helen? Way back there. has been the person who gave life and wonder to everything in our 35 acres. I first landed at the preserve having moved from Boulder, Colorado, and knowing absolutely nothing about native plants. I'd worked for many years in a greenhouse and nursery and taught many gardening classes, but none of them had anything to do with native plants. I'd absolutely no knowledge or appreciation of them. However, Janice, with her big smile and infectious enthusiasm, soon showed me the wonder of plants that flourished with no help from humans. Janice was my mentor. After about 10 years of walking the trails here with Janice and Helen, I felt like I knew every single gymnosperm and angiosperm on the preserve, with the exception of the grasses. And by then I'd actually learned to identify about half of them, thanks to Linda Churchill, who taught a grass class out here. If you have a chance to peruse the plant card notebooks on the memory table, you should know that just about every picture was taken by Janice. An enormous undertaking. There's some 250 of them. I was asked to be part of the organization of those cards. I remember meeting at Viola's house with Janice and Helen and a few others. We discussed what should be on the backs of the cards, and then we each were given a bunch of plants to research and write up the information that appears on the cards. Putting them all together was an enormous job, and Janice's photos made them come to life. I loved the occasions on which I helped Janice take grammar school children around the preserve, encouraging them to appreciate the plants they seldom saw in the city. Even after Janice was no longer able to come out or walk the trails, I continued to think of her on my Sunday afternoons out here. And on returning home each Sunday, I would email Janice with a report of what was blooming, what had disappeared, and what was new. Even now, there isn't a time when I'm on one of the trails that I don't think of something Janice taught me and wish I could let her know.
I'd say something. Hi, my name is Michael Clark, and I'm one of the original founders of the garden. And I met Janice very, very soon after the whole idea became physical. Janice was a photographer. She was a horticulturist. She was a botanist. She wrote incredible articles for our newsletter every month, annotated to forever and detailed. But once you looked in her eyes, she had you. Janice had the most beautiful eyes of anyone I ever met. You know that. And she saw beauty in everything. We saw beauty in her, and we are so grateful for her faith in action, because she didn't just talk about it, she was doing it. Digging holes, cutting plants, baking cookies, whatever it took. And this garden, which has a beautiful, bright future, because of people like Janice Tucker. And we're going to miss her a lot. Thank you for coming.
I just wanted to mention one other dimension of Janice, which we should all remember, which is that she really loved plants and loved people. It's huge. But she president of the Santa Fe Botanical Garden, and Janice wouldn't give up on it. She put her heart and soul into that for the longest time, and showed up at hearings and found new people who would network with us to support the case that we had with the county at the time. And it was always because she really believed in what was special about every place. And I first met her when we used to do garden tours at people's houses, and I had a garden tour at my house, and we had just adopted a baby, so I didn't realize that having a garden tour with a child who was about a year old, when I didn't know anything about motherhood, was going to be a bit of a challenge. And Janice helped me out quite a bit with that, and also I think that was my demonstration of really loving with children. I told my daughter, who's 24 years old, that I was coming here today, and she knew who Janice was. And that's just, to me, you know, I cannot claim I stayed in touch. I've come and gone with the garden 3 and 4 times over. But I said to my daughter today that the qualities that Janice showed, I think, are the qualities that we really aspire to. And so I wanted to
Miller and Lydia and Tom and Lois and Skip, and we knew Janice for many, many reasons. Obviously, the Santa Fe Botanical Gardens and this beautiful place that she loved. But we also knew her for her dogs and her animals. Dogs. One of our dear friends, and you probably know the name, Violet Grasso, was a dear, dear friend of Janice's. And I don't know if you all know it, but we lost Violet recently, and I think it's only fitting that we also recognize Violet and be happy that Violet and Janice and Trey and Sarah and Jack and Lana are all together in a wonderful place.
For coming out here, and you know, the garden is just like it's such a better place because of Janice. You know, she definitely raised it to an incredible level, and just thank you for everyone who has supported the garden, and you know, like I've been there for 11 years, and Janice was my mentor as well, and I don't know, I'm so inspired by her. So we've been so touched to receive many gifts in her honor, and I just want to thank everyone here who has made those gifts. That means a lot. Thank you.